Tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, joined by James Corbett of the CorbettReport.com and also YouTube. Just type in Corbett Report and subscribe to him. Lots of great information he puts out in videos. And I'm embarrassed to say that I've watched your videos, but I've never been to your site. But it looks like a new source that I'll certainly be bookmarking, James, because you have a lot of great information up here. And one of them I want to talk about, and I've already got yelled at for dominating too much of this time, so I'm gonna turn this topic over to you, and let's run on this. It is the propagation of Empire America. It is the delusion that we're fighting a war for democracy spread it around the world. Just like the delusion of weapons of mass destruction, just like the delusion that Chuck Hagel, being sworn in as our new Secretary of Defense, is somehow going to change the dynamic of the United States being this empirical force that has no problem going in destabilizing regions, installing governments, and then when it all comes falling apart, do it all again. So you had recently the opportunity to interview Sybil Edmonds, and she's just absolutely fantastic as far as an information resource. And you told me during the break that you guys talked about Turkey. And why don't we get into that a little bit? What is Turkey's role in all this? I mean, certainly, we have Patriot missiles now in Turkey bordering Syria, but it goes deeper than that, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Well, let me just say Sybil absolutely is an incredible source of knowledge, but even as incredible as she is, this interview I just conducted was particularly important. So I hope people who are listening will go out and take the time to listen to this interview. I think it's one of the most important I've ever conducted. Basically, she was talking about Operation Gladio, which people probably are somewhat familiar with as a program that was instituted by NATO in the wake of World War II. Actually by the OSS, but kind of furthered on by NATO, in the wake of World War II to provide stay-behind operations in Western European countries. In case the communists ever invaded, these forces would be able to kick into action and start destabilization operations within those invaded countries. But of course, as many people probably know to a certain extent, that kind of even if that was ever really the intention, it isn't the way it ended up happening. Basically, these groups weren't stay-behind passive groups that would kick into action. They were in action for the, basically 3 or 4 decades there in that period after World War II, where they were performing these types of operations, false flag terrorist operations, to blame on leftist political parties in Western Europe. And that aspect of it is fascinating and extremely important history and well documented. But what we were talking about was how this manifested in Turkey and in Central Asia and the Caucasus region generally. And we were talking about how Plan A of Operation Gladio was really that paradigm of basically funding far right-wing ultranationalist extremist groups to try to act as the kind of counterbalance or whatever the idea was.
Worse, perhaps.
But the thing was that what we got into in this interview is how around 1996 that Plan A transitioned into a Plan B, which was this Islamization of the Central Asian region. And we talked about some of the characters that were involved in this, including Fethullah Gulen, who runs a $25 billion Muslim madrasa school network from Pennsylvania, where he was one of the most wanted men in Turkey at one point and strutted into the United States, set up shop there, and is now running this multi-billion-dollar Islam madrasa school network with complete impunity, and is funding 350 plus madrasas in that Central Asian region. And how we were talking about how this ties into the war on terror generally, and how Ayman al-Zawahiri and other members of the so-called shadowy al-Qaeda group were directly involved in this Plan B of Operation Gladio. So it goes right into the heart of what it has been the entire war on terror paradigm, and right into 9/11 and all of these events. And it's just absolutely incredible when she lays out this information. So once again, I hope people will go and listen to that interview.
Yeah, no doubt. I've put the link directly to that page in the chat room. It's on the front page of your website as well, the Corbett Report. So if you're listening to this on YouTube later on and you're not in the chat to pick up that link, CorbettReport.com, right on the front page, you can listen to that interview. Fascinating because, we see this expansion, right? We had the Arab Spring last year. Now we see Egypt re-imploding. We talked a little bit during the break about how Chuck Hagel was going to be a different front as far as Secretary of Defense. So there's a little bit of hope that we're somehow going to change our war footing. But truthfully, if again with the concept of nothing is as it seems, nothing is as it seems as it being reported by the mainstream. I truly believe there's no intention to stop this pressure of destabilization in this region. Turkey, of course, is critical. It's a critical country. It's first of all, it's a member of NATO. Second of all, it borders Syria, Iraq, Iran, Armenia, and is right there in the midst of this region that we're certainly trying to enforce our will on. But my question, you might have to answer this after the break, is your take on Western European nations and the U.S. and NATO coming into deeper, I should say, into North Africa. We see recently with Mali, the French operation there, talk of NATO, talk of U.S. potentially expanding operations there. Of course, all in the guise of fighting extremism. And, it fits right into the Gladio Plan B.
It does, and it's absolutely part of a bigger plan. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, you betcha. And my timing sucked. Sorry about that. We're going to be back with James Corbett of the Corbett Report, CorbettReport.com. More Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes, guys. Please hang tight. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath joined by James Corbett. CorbettReport.com is his website. And I told him during the break, I'm sitting here scrolling through it. It's an absolutely great site. It's definitely going to be one that we use as a resource. So if you haven't bookmarked CorbettReport.com as one of your favorites, please do so. Great information there. I'm assuming almost every single day. So I want to keep the topic going on more a little bit here, because one of your articles you have up there is calling on all anti-war leftists or whatever, the anti-war left movement. It's scrolled past, so I don't have it in front of me now. But, we're talking about Turkey. We're talking about destabilization of the region. And I brought up North Africa and, Mali and what we see going on there. Give us your opinion on what's happening in North Africa and the rest of the region.
Well, what's happening in North Africa right now is definitely part of a broader strategy of destabilization, which serves the purpose of providing the pretext for AFRICOM and NATO to get their foot in the door there in Africa. Because, of course, AFRICOM is the African command of the U.S. military that doesn't have a base in Africa. It has its base in Germany. And I think AFRICOM is still looking for the excuse to really actually put boots on the ground in Africa and take more of a presence. And of course, this is really fundamentally about the scramble for resources in Africa against China. And it's been pointed out for going on a decade now that China is becoming more and more a player in Africa. Even Gaddafi was making speeches to the Oxford Students' Union a couple of years ago before he was killed, saying basically it's a contest between China and the United States in Africa right now, and China's probably going to win because they are taking the approach where they will work with countries. They'll give them development aid and infrastructure funding in return for access to resources. Whereas the American tactic, of course, is the same one they've been using around the world, which is at the point of a gun, basically. Either you'll work with us and we'll keep you dictators in power if you work with us, or we'll come and invade you and bomb the hell out of you and pick up the pieces afterwards and take them for ourselves. So that's the choice that's being offered right now. And increasingly, Africa is choosing as a whole to work with China. Trade is increasing greatly and has I believe it's quintupled in the last 5 years. So, I mean, it is just booming right now. And I think AFRICOM and NATO see this as a threat to their dominance over the resources there. That's part of what's going on in Africa right now. And of course, what do we see every time that there's a piece on the geopolitical chessboard that the powers that shouldn't be the NATO powers want to take over? Well, suddenly Al Qaeda finds its way into those countries, and then we see it as part of a. It's just a domino effect. I mean, one of the things about the invasion of Libya that people were saying is this is going to spread this Islamic radicalization to other countries. And in fact, we had people writing at the time of the fall of Libya that Algeria will be next. And lo and behold, there's problems in Algeria now and Mali. And of course, France is taking the lead there. So So unfortunately, this is part of a broader strategy, and it's likely to continue from here.
Well, and we can certainly talk on time frames of how long this will continue. I mean, you have a nation in the United States that very frankly could be, I believe, exposed as a paper tiger if it pushed the wrong buttons and had the wrong adversary in front of it. Now, as long as we're fighting a faceless, nameless enemy that we can just slap a moniker on and invade a nation in the middle of North Africa, then that's one thing. But if we start pushing these desires of expansion and get up against a nation, certainly such as China, certainly such as Russia, perhaps even such as Iran, this country could be exposed for having really technology heavy, but not very deep on the bench, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. I think that really the potential concern, I guess, from the American government's strategic viewpoint would be economic. I think that the economic engine might fall apart long before anything else. And since so much has been invested in the military contractors for so long, I have no doubt that American military might is still absolutely light years ahead of anyone else. And even, I mean, there's a lot being made right now of China's buildup and the fact that they are spending considerably more on their military now than they were before, etc. But even so, they don't really have the ability to fight even a limited theater war in the Pacific specifically, let alone anything more extended than that. And I don't think that's what either side is. Well, certainly not the Chinese. I don't think America is even really contemplating that as a near-term possibility. I think this is more about the long game, and I think China and Russia are really holding back to a large extent on directly confronting America, because I honestly think they're trying to wait this out. I think that they see that the American empire is overextending, and it cannot be maintained forever at the point of a gun. It's going to fall apart economically before it gets to the point of world domination at any rate. So there's a lot of strategy here. But another thing to keep in mind, of course, is that to a certain extent, this is all a facade anyway, because behind the scenes, we know that Kissinger and Rockefeller, etc., were the ones that were opening up China to American capitalism and quote unquote state crony capitalism in the first place. So
right.
There are deep ties between the world power elite, whether they're in America or China or Russia, and I think we have to keep that in mind as part of this game as well.
Yeah, but the struggle certainly is there. I agree. Between China, Russia, and the United States for the access to these resources. And it seems like playing the waiting game on the part of China and Russia is certainly the right tactic. We're going on, a dozen years of the war on terror and countless trillions of dollars and, thousands upon thousands of American lives. And, with an economic backdrop of 0.0 negative GDP growth in the fourth quarter, you really do have to ask yourself, how long can this continue? Does the Federal Reserve have such a bottleneck over global central banking system that they can force confidence in the dollar as the world reserve currency in order to keep expanding this empire? Or is it a matter of a tactical move by one of these nations, such as China, just to shake confidence in U.S. debt and bring this game to an end? Or even Japan. There's very, very many landmines out there, or sea mines, if you will. Any one of them could set off a cascading effect that shows the United States is on completely a very weak foundation economically. And so I guess it's a matter of, does the powers that shouldn't be, as you put it so correctly, do they have the staying power to see this to the end when nations such as China that have, you're talking about the expansion of their military. And yeah, they now have Gen 5 fighters. They now have launched their first real aircraft carrier. And Russia, who's just sitting back on massive energy resources, compiling wealth, compiling military prowess, they're sitting back expanding economically, at least expanding their foundation economically, while the United States continue to overextend itself. I mean, the prognosis, looking at the geopolitical global situation, if you were taken out of it all, you weren't an American, Chinese, or Russian, and you were just looking at the players on the field, you would think America is certainly poised for a fall.
Well, that's right, but I think we have to have the right analogy to sort of understand what's going on here. And I think we have to think of the global power elite as a parasite that's invading a host. And in this case, it happens to be the American country, the place that they took over, and they've infested, and they've basically turned it into their system for military contracts and all of that, which has been what they've been thriving off since the end of the Second World War at the very least. But I think they see it as a time of transition, a time where they're going to break out of their host and find another host to live in, China or whoever it might be. And when we see it that way, we see that the plan ultimately, at the end of the day, is to leave America as this dead, decaying husk on the ground. And I don't think they care what happens to it. So that America will, its economy, its military will cease to be the world standard at some point, is actually part of the game plan. And that doesn't necessarily hurt the elite, who, of course, are these transnational entities. They don't have any allegiance to any country, and they don't care about their countrymen, quote unquote. They just care about perpetuating their lines and their control. So to a certain extent, we have to understand that this is being engineered, and the fact that it's going to fall apart is part of the plan itself.
Great analysis, James. I absolutely love it. All right, we're going to be back with James Corbett, more Wide Awake News Radio, in just a few minutes. Last segment in this first hour, so maybe we'll look a little bit into the future and try to make some educated guesses. We're going to be back with James Corbett, more Wide Awake News Radio. Please hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, joined by James Corbett. His website is The Corbett Report. Wait a minute, I better get that right. It's thecorbettreport.com, correct?
The Corbett Report or Corbett Report, both will take you there.
Okay, good. All right. The Corbett Report or CorbettReport.com. His YouTube channel, of course, is The Corbett Report. And I told him during the break, I absolutely appreciate his perspective because I think I think you're right on the money, and I agree with everything you're talking about tonight. This is our final segment with James. Coming up, hour number 2. Sherry Edwards, hang around if you want to hear some analysis of some of the voices that I know you guys are wanting to hear, some of the interviews and that kind of thing. Somebody put in the Hillary Clinton on Benghazi testimony when she absolutely went bananas and was full of rage and vile. And I can't wait to hear if Sherry had a chance to analyze that. James, let's talk in this last 10 minutes or so. I think we both agree that the expansion of war is definitely in the United States' future. Chuck Hagel might be sworn in tomorrow or sworn in soon as the war secretary. But the fact is, this plan has been put into motion. We've had a decade of prosecuting a war, again, on people we can't see and countries that can't surrender. Seeing the economic toll that it's taking on the United States and the world, looking at the economic landscape, what is your gut feeling? I hate to use the word prediction for time frames. I mean, do you think we're looking at, as some people think, decades more of central bank control, elite control, or do you think we hit a stumbling block before too much longer?
It's a good question, and it's one that I can't, in all honesty, answer because I just don't see a way of determining that because there are too many variables, including the fact that we all are variables in that equation as well. But in terms of whether it would be theoretically possible for them to drag along the current system for decades, I just don't see that being a possibility. I think that the system as it is currently designed is going to fail in the nearer term than decades. A lot of people predict the crash will come any day now, any month, any year even. I can't say that with any certainty because they've managed to limp along for so many years now on this completely fictitious economy, which is so completely decoupled from economic reality that one marvels at how they've managed to maintain this for so long. So I think the wheels will fall off. But again, as I say, I think that's part of the plan. And it's a question of what will be there to transition into. And of course, they're going to hold up the regional government idea and ultimately some sort of globally connected system. It may not appear as global government, but behind the scenes, if there's a functioning reserve currency that's not the US dollar and that is some sort of international standard, that's going to be a functioning world economy in all but name, and eventually it's just a step or two from there to world government of one form or another, if we're not already somewhat into a system like that. So I think this is going to fall apart, but the question is really, what do we do about this? And as I say, I think ultimately the power lies at the bottom of the pyramid. It does not lie at the very top. The only thing that the top of the pyramid can do is try to arrange the structures of society and hope that we step into them. And if we do, then we can be led along into whatever system they try to create and put in place after the collapse. But our power is really to choose what we do and how we interact with other people. And just because they say that these pieces of paper that they put in front of our face are money and that we should trade in them doesn't mean that that's so. And the real secret, the real solution is that each and every single day we choose whether or not to feed the beast. We choose who to interact with and what to spend our money on. And if we simply chose to spend more of our time and money and economic productivity engaging with people in our community in productive ways that bypass the system, we truly could engineer an alternative system that means that whatever they try to engineer people into, whatever the system they try to bring along, will not take hold. So I'm always trying to advocate those points at which we can construct an alternative economy based on alternative currencies and based on ideas of setting up community exchanges, local farmers markets. Those types of things are the pressure points on the system where we really do have leverage, because ultimately our lives remain in our hands. And if we don't choose to go along with the system, they can't make us do that except at the point of a gun. And at that point, it becomes a very different strategy altogether.
No doubt about it. I agree with it. Let me ask you this, though, because I'm with you, and I believe that an alternative economy, an alternative community dynamic is the answer, is the solution. And my issue always runs into, or my frustration runs into the point of trying to convince folks of that now, because this might sound very pessimistic, but I don't believe, as long as the lights are on, the beer's flowing, and a Super Bowl is coming up, and the NBA started, and this normalcy bias is on the United States, on the West in general, you won't have enough people that have the desire to pull their head out of the sand and realize what's going on, realize nothing is what it seems. So is your plan, are you thinking that this notion of community and this notion of alternative economic means, is this something that could happen pre-collapse, or is it something that you're looking forward to as far as a solution to offer post-collapse, which is probably where I come in?
Well, this is exactly why I do what I do, because if I didn't believe there was a chance that we could at least get ourselves better prepared, then what would really be the point of all of this? I think there have been times of great destabilization, even in the past 11 years. Thinking back to 9/11 was a time when a lot of people woke up and understood what the system was really about. The economic collapse with Lehman Brothers back in 2008 was another time when a lot of people started really deeply questioning the system. And I think the point is that as we get closer to this tipping point, there will be more crises. And it's a question of being there with the information, even beforehand, being out in front of it, telling people what's happening, telling people why it's happening, so that when they do get shaken free from that matrix, they can step out and take a look at the information that you already have there provided and see that there is an alternative. And this is extremely important, because we are moving into a time where they're trying to liquidate and basically destabilize all of the economic norms and the relations that we have as a society, so that they can transfer us into the new system. But when that happens, when they start destabilizing the system, that's a chance for us to get people out of that matrix altogether. So it is a struggle, and it is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, trying to spread information. Just spread information, and I think that's an extremely important thing to be doing right now, because if people can see, for example, how the alternative currency system is what's keeping people in Greece alive right now, because they have set up these alternative currencies and things like that, if we can show people that, there is the chance that some people will be able to look beyond the end of their own nose and realize that exactly what we're being put into here. Yeah,
and James and I have never spoke before this night. And, those of you who listen to me on the radio program on YouTube realize that, I mean, you are saying the exact same things that I've said to people who've called in or guests about, what the reason for doing what I'm doing, for doing what you're doing. It isn't that I'm living in some kind of fantasy where I think that, I'm going to come on here and things are going to change overnight. I understand that they're not. But if your only source of information, if your only news is a spun, agenda-driven propaganda network, or this phony left-right dialogue that comes out of D.C., then if you don't ever hear this truth or you're not exposed to it, then why on earth would anybody, besides just becoming frustrated, start to question the current power structure? And I personally believe that we will come under, excuse me, we have been governed by crisis for so long that it's become normal for us to give up freedom, give up our future, our financial future, in order for this promise of rescue. But at some point in the near future, James, I believe they're going to, we will be led into a real crisis, a crisis that isn't going to go away because we give extraordinary war powers to the Federal Reserve, a crisis that is going to change everybody's way of life, that will be the freight train coming down the tracks. And those in that time, we need to have had people like you out there with your website, with your videos, screaming from the rooftops for this whole amount of time. This is coming. Here's what brought us here, and hopefully here's a solution.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's what it has to be about at the end of the day, is what we can do about this. And I think the biggest secret that they don't want people to know about is that you do have power, that you are history's actors, and that all of us, each and every one of us, has an individual responsibility to be doing what we can to prepare ourselves and our loved ones and warning others about what's going on. And everyone can internalize that in their own way. But once you know about this information and once you know what's happening, there is no excuse. If you're not doing what you can to get the word out to others, then unfortunately you're just adding to the problem. Because absolutely, this is a freight train that's heading towards a destination that I'm assuming all of your listeners, and I'm sure all of my listeners, know all too well by now, and it doesn't look like anything we want to see. So we have to find a way to build another track to take this train on, and that's exactly what we're here doing. So hopefully, it is reaching more and more people. I know that from my own experience, and it's just a question of whether or not we're going to win this foot race with the New World Order.
Well, I don't know if we're going to win it, but I'm going to be here when they unleash the Uber crisis. Personally, I believe it's going to be a sovereign debt crisis that is crippling to the West and standard of living of the West, without a doubt. You're in Japan. Is that part, quickly, we only have about a minute left, but is that part of a preparedness strategy, or do you just like Japan?
I ended up here years and years and years ago on a whim, basically, and it was absolutely not part of any strategy, but I really do love it here, and now I have a Japanese wife, and we have our first child on the way, so congratulations on that, and again, I want to thank you for coming on, because I really like you, man, and I hope we can get you back on. I like your point of view, I like your perspective, and I really like your website, thecorbettreport.com or corbettreport.com. And again, you can access his videos on YouTube. Just type in Corbett Report. And, we never really answered the question of time frames coming into the future. And I'm kind of with you. I don't like to put a date on anything, because it seems that whenever I've tried to do that, whenever I've tried to say this is the top or this is the bottom, it ends up slapping me right in the face. So, James Corbett, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your hard work, and keep up the fight, man. Thank you. Thank you. You too.
All right. You have a good night. Guys, please stay tuned. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we will have Sherry Edwards of Sound Health Options. So hang out. We'll see you in a few minutes.